Calgary Foothills.
So the government and Enmax have reached out of court settlement over the power purchasing agreement lawsuit. The NDP caused the lawsuit by raising the carbon tax, which invalidated the contracts with the power generators. The settlement means Enmax will transfer carbon offset credits to the balancing pool in exchange for payment of unknown value. To the Minister of Energy, how much is the government paying to the balancing pool to cover the purchase of these carbon offset credits? What's the secret number?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the government took legal action over 2 years ago to fight for Albertans' interests, and many parties such as Enmax were involved, but to be clear, that action was against the previous governments. We're pleased to have this final agreement signed off, because now it allows us to work together with them and other companies to go forward in our electricity transition, where we're going off of coal and onto renewables and using natural gas to fill that gap. So we're very pleased with that, knowing that we're going to move forward with cleaner air and a better electricity system, Mr. Speaker.
First supplemental.
Given that the former president of the balancing pool, Gary Reynolds, said the entire situation has been in complete shambles since 2015, and given the legal action has actually cost consumers hundreds of millions of dollars because the legal action forestalled the balancing pool from terminating the PPA sooner, why hasn't this government taken responsibility for the $70 million cost to taxpayers each and every month as a result of their mismanagement?
The Honourable Minister.
He's asking. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this agreement does provide for the transfer from Enmax to the balancing pool of carbon offset credits as part of their agreement. Many other details certainly are between themselves and the government. These offset credits are going to allow the balancing pool the flexibility in meeting future greenhouse emissions compliance obligations. And at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, this is, again, a step we took as government to stand up for Albertans for backroom deals that were arrived at by previous government, and Enmax and other companies were part of that, and we're glad that all of the agreements are signed so we can move forward.
Your Honourable Minister. Second supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, given the PPA debacle has cost Albertans millions of dollars because this NDP raised the carbon tax on electrical generation, and given the third quarter result update shows the balancing pool will need to borrow $650 billion in debt, which is $418 million more than the budget, will the minister stand in this House and tell Albertans how much is the total cost of this NDP PPA debacle?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, we took action on a broken system that we inherited from the previous government. And we're pleased that this final agreement has been reached, because we are taking action on climate change. We're taking action on fixing a broken system. And now we can work with all the companies to go forward and create a system that Albertans deserve, Mr. Speaker, one that's stable, predictable, and works, provides predictability for month-to-month bills and not the spikes that we used to see before.
The Honourable Member for Brent. The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Given that one government cannot sue a former government, it's called the Crown, it's not divisible. Given that the government just signed an out-of-court settlement with Enmax, given that the minister has refused to tell us how much it is, I will offer the minister another opportunity to be forthcoming with Albertans. How many tens or hundreds of millions of tax dollars have we lost in this secret court settlement?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the other agreements, as with this one, the agreements are between the government and each of the companies. The broad strokes of this one is it involves turning back some of the carbon offset credits to the balancing pool, but at the end of the day, each agreement is different because each company is different, and at the end of the day, we're all going to work together to create a new system, one that was broken, one that we inherited from the previous government, and as we go on to a capacity market, renewables, all the different things and creating a more stable system. We're now free to work with all these companies on that, and I'm pleased with this arrangement.
Leader of the official Leader of the official opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think this will now be the fifth opportunity for the minister to answer the question, given that she has not done so yet. This is a matter of clear public interest for Alberta taxpayers on the floor of this legislature to learn how much the government has just signed away to a power company that it sued, Mr. Speaker. It sued wrongfully. So will the minister, Mr. Speaker, please disclose how big is the check that it's writing to Enmax from Alberta taxpayers? Will she disclose that, or will it stay a secret?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned, as with all the other companies that we made arrangements and with, this one is between the company and the government. And at the end of the day, we're pleased that this agreement has been reached. It's been a long 2 years. And again, this whole court thing was because of backroom deals from previous government who set up a system of volatility that was hard on Albertans, hard on people's pocketbooks, and this is something we are fixing along with our new electricity grid.
Mr. Speaker, given that the government cannot spend public money without the authorization of the legislature, given that it has to be voted supply to write the check to Enmax, Alberta taxpayers and members of this place have a right to know how big is the bill, and will this minister take responsibility for the fiasco that has cost Alberta taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars? Come clean. How much is the cost, Mr. Speaker? How many hundreds of millions has this government lost us?
The Honourable Minister.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And absolutely, there will be a budget that all of us will discuss after the 22nd, I believe. It will be put forward, and we'll have opportunity to discuss a number of matters and also with estimates. But today, again, this is an arrangement that has been reached between Enmax and ourselves. It allows us now, we're complete with all the agreements, and we can move on with working with coal communities. We can work with transitioning to renewables and natural gas. We can work on creating a system that's going to be stable, yeah, without spikes and predictable for consumers.
For West